Hello, welcome back to my 401st video. 400. Do you know, I didn't even notice on the last video that that was my 400, that was my 400 video. I made 400 videos. Was that the right, was that even a sentence? Yeah, it was. 100th. I just can't say it. 100th. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, this is number 401. So we've got 401 videos. Just a little sit down one. And before I go on, little disclaimer. If it looks smoky in the kitchen, it's because it is. I've got an auntie from the Caribbean and she used to make rotis. And I made this soup yesterday. And it looks disgusting because it's all vegetables and spices and chilies and it's really hot. Like it knocked me for six. But I felt like because I've been sick that I needed some vegetables and some herbs and spices and something spicy to warm me back up. So I made that and then I wanted rotis and I burnt the last one. So if it looks a bit smoky in the kitchen, that's because it is. But it wasn't smoky enough to set off the smoke alarm, so you might not be able to see it. So that's quite good. Other disclaimer, I do have spiritual practice. I have mentioned it before. I don't really talk about it that much on my channel. To be honest, I don't. Because I believe that we're all entitled to our own spiritual practice. However you want to do your spiritual practice, and most people do have one. You know, if whatever you decide to do, it doesn't bother me. I'm happy to have you here. We're all in this world together, and we should just all love one another, and that's that. So yeah, I will be mentioning I will be mentioning part of my spiritual practice in this video, but not preaching. So I just wanted to put that out there before you all switch off. Anyway, this is the thing. I wanted to ask you this question because this came to me while I was praying. There's my spiritual practice bit. So I was saying a prayer while I was ill. It kind of went like this. Oh God, I'm dying. Please save me. I was kind of like that. I was in that state. I felt rough. And I was like, I really do need your help. And this question came to me, and it was in the middle of the night when the best questions come to you in the middle of the night. And in my head, it just like kind of flashed across like a big, I don't know, like a big event notice or something, like Piccadilly Circus. I kind of went, this question popped up, and it was basically, if there was something in the world, I'm not talking about with other humans or things that have happened with other humans. We all, you know, have moments where we argue and things happen, and some of us are bad and some of us are good and that stuff. I'm talking about world stuff. So something in the world that you wished you'd never been introduced to. And when I thought about what my answer was, it completely changed the way I look at that, and it stopped me from doing it. So I asked myself that question. What was that? That's what came into my head. That was the question that popped up. And, you know, I thought, well, what is the one thing in the world that I wish I'd never been introduced to? And my one was alcohol. And I've done many videos on alcohol. I've done lots of videos on alcohol. There's a few on this channel. There's I think there's a couple on my other channel, Rissa Chats, which I've not been on in an age. I'm so sorry, but I will put a link below to that channel if you want to go over there. I am going to try and get back on it a bit more consistently, because I used to do it, just sit and do my makeup and just talk about a topic, because I like to talk. I don't know if you can tell. But anyway, that came up. So I asked that question. When I asked it myself, it suddenly, all of this stuff flashed before me. I sort of went, alcohol has been in my life ever since I can remember, and not always in a good way. So one side of my family would use alcohol the way that I would class as a probably safer way of using it. So one side of my family would use alcohol by, say, Christmas. They might have a glass of wine. a wedding, they might have a glass of champagne. You know, you might have a cheeky snowball, because it was the early 80s when I was a child. And, you know, that kind of scenario, you know, like a special occasion, not, you know, a pop down the pub every 5 minutes. Or like if we were on holiday, we might pop to a pub, might have a pint. You know, it was that kind of a scenario. Whereas the other side of my family, and the one that I spent a lot of time with, they are all really big into their drink. I'm not saying that they're all alcoholics, because they're not. However, socially, that's what we would do. So everybody would get together. Even when I was a child, the kids would all be together, and, you know, they'd be knocking back cans of beer or bottles of wine or shorts. You know, that's what they would do. And, you know, there'd be music on, and they'd all be talking and laughing. And so when I got to being a teenager, I thought that was normal, because that's what you drum into your children when they're little, they think that's normal. They think it's normal. So I thought that was normal. So I'm, you know, going about my teenage years, and I'm a Gen X. So because I'm Gen X, I had all the grungy stuff and the Britpop and the ladette stuff. Sorry about my cough. Anyway, that's what we done. Everybody went drinking. Everyone went down the pub. We were all underage drinking as well, because nobody checked your ID back then. You know, things were really revolving around it. And later on, I started to go to church. So what happened was, I had my kids, and I'd pretty much all but stopped drinking. I just weren't really into it anymore. So I had my kids, and they were still quite small, and I started sort of attending church. Now, my initial reasoning for attending church wasn't what you'd think. It wasn't like, oh, I need to go and worship the Lord. I feel like I can do that anywhere. But it was to utilise the, you know, sort of get-togethers and things for the children. So the children, so I was in LDS. So LDS do a lot of stuff for the kids. There's like a nursery sort of thing, and, you know, there's a primary thing, and the kids are like having a ball with each other. They would do things for Christmas. You know, there'd be things during the week. We'd have play dates. There was lots and lots and lots of things. So what happened was, I was going to church constantly for 2 years. And I have mentioned this before, but it was the best 2 years ever, because I did not drink once. Not only because I was in church, and LDS don't even drink tea or coffee, so I wasn't even drinking tea or coffee, but I felt great inside and out. My countenance had changed. My friend group had changed. And, you know, all of this stuff everything was going really well. And then something crazy happened at the church. And it was all in the papers, so I can mention it. But what happened was, our bishop turned out to be downloading really bad things from the internet that he shouldn't have been looking at. And he went to prison. And he was cut off by the church. And that, even though he stated the obvious that he, you know, my kids had never been alone with him and stuff like that. But even though he sort of said, well, look, he'd never sort of, like, basically the church and his job, he was a teacher as well. He worked in a school, or I think he was an assistant teacher. Either way, he worked in a school. He was in positions of trust. And he basically said that was like a cover-up. His job and his position in the church was a cover-up. So nothing was ever done to the children there. But we don't know if he did actually ever do anything, or if he was just looking at things. We don't know. But the simple fact is the tendencies were there, and it freaked me out because that became my safe place. That was my safe place. That is where I went to be safe. And I took my children there because I thought it was safe. And that happened. And when that happened, I left church. I wouldn't say like I'd started to drink right away, but I did start to go out a bit more. I started going back to my old friend group. I, was spending a lot of time. Like, that's what they did, because that's what everyone did when the way they were brought up. And you kind of end up with that circle if you do that. So I ended up like going out and about again. And I started to drink again. And I'd leave my kids with my mum, and, I'd go out and babysit, which you'd go, oh yeah, okay, it's all right to go out sometimes. But it isn't, because I was a terrible binge drinker. So I didn't know when to stop, because that's all I'd been doing before that. So I'd be drinking, and then the next day I'd be hungover, laying on a sofa, having to look after my children, which is completely irresponsible now when I look back on it. But at the time, it was normal. Oh, let's go. We can take the kids to the, I don't know. There was even, oh, this is so bad. There was even a pub with a park in it. A park. So you'd take the kids, you'd get some lunch, let them play in the park and sit there having a beer. I mean, it's beyond belief, isn't it? But then I think if you haven't had an issue with alcohol in some way, then it would be, it would probably be all right for you to just go and have the one. It would, it would be fine. I'm not judging anyone for doing that. But what I'm saying is, when you're sitting there drinking consistently, you don't want to be doing that. It's not a good look. It just doesn't, it's not good. It's not a good idea to do. There are not many parents that end up being like the best parents in the world when they're like drinking all day. It's as simple as that. So that happened. And when my kids grew up, the oldest one, not the youngest one's not much of a drinker, although she does have a drink, but not much. And the older one would binge drink, the same as me. And basically, when I asked myself that question, what would I wished I hadn't have been introduced to in the world, and alcohol came up, all of that stuff that I just told you just flashed before me, and I went, oh my God, if I had never been introduced to alcohol, life would have been so incredibly different, because it stopped me from doing so many things. I'd say, well, look, okay, well, we'll pop out, we'll have a few drinks. The next day I'd be dying. So it would ruin my day the following day, which means nothing would really get done. And then I'd have to go back to work. So this thing with it becoming a weekend thing, I have mentioned this before, and I won't go back into it because it's just boring. But I won't go back into it. But there are videos on my channel, and there's the one that I mentioned on Rissa Chats as well, where I go quite into depth about the way I think about alcohol and how I think it's being used as a control mechanism. Because they tell us it's bad for us, but they don't take it away. So if it was that bad for us, they would take it away, wouldn't they? But they don't do that because it's a multi-billion pound franchise. It's bringing in a lot of money. So they're not going to take it away. It's as simple as that. They would rather just put it out there and say, I hope that you make the right choice. But the simple fact is, it's an addictive thing. It is still a drug, and you get addicted to it. So anyway, when I asked myself this question, just getting back to the sort of plot of the video here, the topic, not the plot. It's kind of like the plot. I feel like I do jazz hands. But yeah, I getting back to that topic, when I asked myself that question, it instantly stopped me from wanting to be around it. Instantly. Because I kind of went, well, yeah, I'm right. If that wasn't in the world, if I hadn't have been introduced to it, then my life would have been very, very different. My kids' life would have even been a bit different, because I wouldn't have sort of been going to friends' houses and sitting there thinking that I know what we'll do. We'll come pop round and, the kids can play for a bit and we'll have a sleepover and then we'll get a curry and a bottle of wine. You know, like, why, that's what I'm saying, why does it need to revolve around it? So I realised that a lot of my life, socially, had been revolving around it. And I went, I don't want that. I have mentioned this before, alcohol did kill my brother. I wasn't comfortable talking about it at first, because I think when you mention that, you know, you've had a family member that has died from alcoholism, they automatically think of a, you know, sort of old, bearded, homeless person who's like dirty with a brown paper bag, like they portray in the movies. He wasn't like that. We wouldn't have known. In actual fact, most of us didn't know how bad it was until he actually went into hospital and his organs were failing and he was on life support. So it's a tragic story and I don't want to see it happen again. So my thing, when this question popped up when I was in prayer, I went, what a crazy question. And then I realised what was going on. I was like, actually, if you think of it like that, you want to break the chain. And so I did. I broke the chain. And that chain broke the chain with my oldest child, who no longer drinks. She does not drink. She's the healthiest she's ever been. She's a great mother. You know, she's got a little baby of her own now, and she's not drank since way before that, because obviously she was pregnant, so she wasn't drinking anyway. But it was kind of during that time when we kind of went, don't really need that in our lives. And I've not looked back since. I now live my life, be it sometimes I'm ill, most of every other week it seems at the moment, but yeah. But, you know, I live my life and I make plans that don't involve it. So I wanted to ask you that question. What is the thing that if in the world I'm talking about, if it was never there, if you were never introduced to it and it would make a change to your life, what would it be? I'm just interested to know what other people's are. I've asked a few other people the same question and I've had a few things that have been quite amusing. The internet. One of my friends said women. But I said no, because I said not humans. I meant worldly stuff. So yeah, you know, that the internet was a big one because, you know, we come from a generation, I'm the last generation, I should do a talk about that, one of the last generations to live in a time without the internet and without mobile phones. And at one point we had 3 channels on our TV. We had no cable, no Sky, no satellites, no nothing like that. So yeah, I'm one of the last generation to live without that stuff. And honestly, I think a lot of us would go back there in a shot, you know, in a long shot, because it'd just be amazing to just experience that again. And we spent a lot more time together. But at the same time, you know, as I was saying, that one thing that I wish wasn't there in that time would be alcohol. So let me know in the comments what your one is. Also, thank you so much for my new subscribers. I am so glad to have you here. As you can see, I am feeling a little bit better. I'm still coughing a lot. I'm still quite sniffly, so I do apologise for that. Apologies for the coughing during the video. I can't, I mean, if I was to not video until I was better, you probably wouldn't have got a video until February, because I've been ill since the beginning of December. So yeah, you're just, sometimes I'm ill, sometimes I'm not, but this is real life. My channel is about being real. So I am happy to have you here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support. If you like what I'm doing, please like, comment and subscribe. And I would love it if you would share your thoughts about this one in the comments. See you on the next one.